The following podcast was recorded prior to the news of Senator John McCain's passing. We here at Elected News would like to offer our condolences to the family and friends of this true American hero. There are 70 days until you go to the polls for the 2018 midterm elections. This morning on the Elected Podcast, we have on the sitting congresswoman in the New York 22nd District to talk about the issues and President Trump's visit to Utica, New York. All that and much more coming up today on Episode 4, 70 Days for August 28th, 2018. This is the Elected Podcast. Joining me now is the sitting congresswoman in the 22nd District of New York, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Thanks so much for coming on, Claudia, on short notice.
Thank you, Luke. I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll stay in contact because I am driving, and I apologize if we get cut off.
Yeah, it's all right. The president visited Utica on Monday. I had the pleasure of being there. One of the few in the local media, the only one in the local media actually, who was in the building when he came on Monday. You were with him all day, right? You were with him when he flew in from Griffiths.
I met him at Rome when he landed, and my son and I and Maria Babula, whose son, Captain George Wood, was killed in the Iraq War, was also among the greeters. Brian Wyman, the father of Kurt Wyman, the deputy that was killed in action and former Marine, and Vincent Scalise, who runs the CNY Veterans Outreach Center. So we were the four that greeted him, and then got to see the group at the airport and onto the motorcade. And I think that's something that's not being reported on, probably because there was no media there. But all the way through Griffiths Park and all the way around and down 49, there were just, scores of supporters of the president, and some Tenney supporters out there all the way along the route. And I think the president was impressed with that. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of like running in the Boilermaker with all the people that are there. Right. But there were a lot of strong support right up until we got to the venue at Utica. And then we did a roundtable discussion with a number of business leaders. And then we did some photos, and then we went out. And by the way, the president opened it up to all the news media, so media was actually in the room.
Yes, I saw that they let Fox News and CNN there, and at the last minute. What was the roundtable like?
Well, the roundtable is a group of business leaders. A lot of them are really happy with tax reform. Local business people who wanted to meet the president and realized this was a unique opportunity because the price tag, even though you keep hearing about how expensive it was actually pretty reasonable to get to be able to be one-on-one or with a small group with the president of the United States. Right. It's anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 to be part of a roundtable discussion. So it was great. We had good input. We talked about a number of issues. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about New York State. We talked about the tax cuts. We talked about continuing to bring our country back, especially some of the problems we have in New York. The president emphasized that he was going to be protecting Social Security and Medicare, and that it was very important to him. And everybody, of course, agreed to that, since we tended to be an older crowd. But it was really interesting, and he engaged everyone, and he encouraged everyone to support me, and said that I've been a very strong supporter of his in Washington, and also a good advisor on a number of issues that I've discussed with him. So it was nice of him. He was very kind, and trying to tell them all, we've got to get her back. We need her, and we need her back. She's a great advocate for the region. That's why I'm here. I want you to make sure you know she works with me. She's making our agenda happen. It's an incredible agenda, and he talked a little bit about that and just how unprecedented our gains and accomplishments have been in this very tough environment, and just all that has happened, from rolling back regulations to tax cuts to historic gains for our military in a predictable way. Just so many things have been happening in a positive way. So the president is really, really geared up. He's a force of nature, of course.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. From the short time I was with him, we have a video coming out on Tuesday with all sorts of brand new exclusive stuff from when I met the president just for a short time there after his big speech at the Hotel Utica. He's definitely a larger than life presence. He commands a room.
Oh, he does. He's definitely very charismatic. He's very powerful. He's got an endless energy,
Oh yeah.
and he is something. I mean, he really you can see why he was able to burst through and become the Republican Party nominee over so many others with his forcefulness and his charisma.
Right. So, from what I had heard, from what you were saying at the event, this is the first time a sitting U.S. president, has visited Utica since Harry Truman back in 1948, and that was just on a whistle stop. So this is really very significant that he came not only just to Utica, but he came and spoke and was in the city for a great period of time. How significant is that? How does that speak to your relationship with the president?
I think it's very historic that the president actually, whistle stop tours are the thing of the past, but in today's age of these very expensive campaigns, and the president is really unprecedented in the way he is traveling around the country to support candidates who are supporting his agenda to drain the swamp. For one, he knows I'm an independent. He knows that I'm working hard and I'm a strong advocate for our region and have gotten there really as on a shoestring budget, and really was outspent grossly in 2016 and faced a three-way primary and a three-way general. So the president going around and going to events and going right into towns and advocating for different candidates is really unbelievable. I don't know when that's ever happened, but he is actually, whether you like him or not, he's very iconic person. He has changed the world. I mean, he is the whole dynamic of the presidency, of leadership. Everything has been turned on its head, and he has his own style. It's very different than others. Some don't like it. Some, maybe don't like his tweeting and some of that stuff. But I think in the end, you'll see he is really accomplished, as I said, an amazing amount. Just what he gets criticized so much and constantly on a number of issues that I think are pretty unfair for, and I think that he still continues to stand up, and he gets up every day, and just when you think it's all a disaster, he gets up and moves in another direction and just accomplishes tasks. And that's the sign of a successful business person. And I do think it's very valid when they say promises made and promises kept. And I will give you just a little anecdote, which I think is important about why the president being a promise keeper and also being a task completer is significant. We were at a rally with Ivanka Trump, or an event, actually a roundtable discussion in Cortland, and the host of the event was a business owner down there, a soup coat, and the business owner said, well, before the president even passed the tax cuts, we were getting ready for them because we knew we were going to be investing in new equipment. We knew that we were going to be giving our employees raises, and we are going to give our employees bonuses and adding to their 401k, and we were all excited about that. And so Ivanka Trump immediately came back and said, so you know that my father is a man of his word. You already knew that the tax cuts were going to happen. And he said, of course, that's why I voted for him. So I do think that there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that's why you see so much consumer confidence. And even in areas like ours, which has been economically depressed for a long time under decades of liberal, progressive, almost socialist and corrupt policies coming out of Albany, you see even some vibrancy in our region. Not as, the economy is roaring much stronger in other parts of the country, but in New York is lagging, and it's because of our oppressive tax regime, our oppressive regulations, and our high energy costs, among many things in New York. But there is a glimmer of hope, and we're trying to do as much as we can on the federal side, and the president recognizes that.
And what I will say is, with the promises made, promises kept, health care is a major issue that Republicans didn't seem to be able to get through Congress. They got rid of the individual mandate, but in the end, they weren't able to repeal Obamacare. Talk about that process, because many Democrats were upset with the benefits in the proposed health care bill. They're upset with how many benefits were cut. And on the flip side, many conservatives were hoping more benefits would be cut. And I guess the president credits this to a certain senator, which I'm pretty confident in saying that he's referring to John McCain.
Yes.
Do you agree with his assertion that this is all because of John McCain, or is it because it was a flawed bill?
I don't think the bill was perfect. I do think it was a compromise bill in the end. The first time it came to the floor, it didn't pass. And so we regrouped and came up with we added the MacArthur amendment and a couple of other amendments. We also did something, not just with the individual mandate, we also added, the president's done a number of things on the regulatory level, which allowing businesses, similar businesses to group together in association health plans, which are prohibited under the old ACA or under the ACA, which now gives our small business community a chance to grow. But let me go back to the bill itself and where we are with what's happening. Obamacare is a disaster. It is destroying our small business community. I have traveled around this district for a year and a half now. Tax cuts are great. Rolling back regulations are great. Right. The biggest problem we have with wage stagnation, based on what my information I'm getting from businesses, small, medium, and large across the district, especially in New York, is the fact that we have healthcare going up in double-digit increases every year, that we are denying accessibility to healthcare for people who are independent, who don't have a public employer or don't have an employer that provides health care. Right. The options are completely unaffordable. They're extremely expensive. The cost and the deductibles are so high that most of these people can't even afford to go to the doctor, but they have to have some kind of health care in case of some catastrophic event, or they have children. So this is a huge disservice to the people in our community. We have to retain the House of Representatives, or you're going to see us slide into socialism, and you're going to see all the gains we've made in the economy bursting to almost a 4%, over a 4% this quarter, and likely going to maybe a full 4% by the end of the year. All those gains will be lost in the event that we should lose the majority, not to mention the fact that we will spend the next 2 years of this presidency dealing with impeachment, restoring socialism, or the socialist move that we have, maybe full-on socialism, raising taxes, opening borders, putting Americans at risk, not respecting the important value of being a citizen of the United States, which is, I think, one of the secrets to why Donald Trump won. You know, being a citizen has its obligations, but it also has its benefits. And I think people who are willing to make that effort to be a citizen and earn that right should be granted the benefits of citizenship and not have that taken away by people who have not fairly put themselves in line to become citizens. And one thing I think is really important to note, and back into the healthcare situation, which is why this border issue is very important, is that there's a concept that the Democrats and Bernie Sanders are talking about. It's called Medicare for All. What that is government-run healthcare, which will eliminate all plans that are held by anybody now. If you're in a union or a private employer or anyone, you're going to be forced into this massive government bureaucracy. It's going to cost $90 to $150 billion. Those are the estimates annually for the taxpayers of New York to create this, this terrible system. And you're going to hurt seniors, and you're going to put everyone, illegal immigrants, you name it, in line ahead of our Medicare recipients. And if people who are dependent on Medicare and Social Security think that they're not getting their fair share now, and they're not, wait till they see these people getting in line. Illegal immigrants, I mean, my opponent's already voted for this 4 times to give illegal immigrants access over illegal citizens. He's already voted to give illegal immigrants tuition assistance coming from the taxpayers of New York. I mean, this is a dangerous situation that could happen if we end up going this way in New York and bring it even on a national scale. So I think it's really important to note that about healthcare.
One of the things I got criticism on was on our last interview. I didn't ask about comments you made about Democrats shortly after the Parkland shooting in a radio interview. Do you want to comment on those comments you made in an interview? I've gotten quite a bit of feedback from that interview.
And you know what? I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I don't think there's anyone in the history of our community, and I'm not exaggerating, who has been smeared, and I'm talking about in politics, smeared like I have been, who the swamp monsters and the sewer in Albany have tried so hard to destroy me. I've stood up to the most powerful people in our community, and we have tried to come up with solutions for what's going on in our communities. And right after Parkland, I was on an interview with one of the toughest interviews, probably in politics, and that's with the famous New York Post journalist who had a radio show named Fred Dicker. And the minute after the Parkland shooting, you could see CNN, all the news shows, all the liberal media were just screaming and blaming the Republicans, blaming NRA. They're the ones that are responsible for all the mass murders. They're the ones who are killing people. I mean, it is outrageous if you go back and look at what happened during that week. I'm a sensible person. I believe in the Second Amendment. And we came up with some solutions. We came up with some ideas to talk about securing our schools. We put in a lot of money. I advocated and endorsed a bill that would put money to secure the borders in our schools, to give resources to the teachers and to our administrators so they would look for students that might be in trouble and in need. And my response, and it's a very aggressive interview, was, it's interesting, because when some of these mass murderers, to be honest with you, I think they're all crazy when they get to the point where they're committing this kind of crime. But they're not all registered Republicans. Many of them, when all the dust settles, Democrats are left-leaning. And that is all I said. And it's been turned into, immediately trended on Twitter.
Right.
The news media, Penny, Democrats are mass murderers, totally smearing me. That is exactly the opposite. All I was saying is that, no, not all these mass murders are caused by Republicans or the NRA or registered Republicans. It actually has nothing to do with your registration, but to stop blaming Republicans and our policies and the Second Amendment and lawful gun owners, because lawful gun owners, are good people. But it doesn't matter. They lie and smear, and that's what they do. Because if you have to do that, that just tells me right now you're not in a good position. You feel threatened. You don't think that you have a winning message if you have to actually distort or lie about, your opponent's record. But this is his political mentor. Governor Cuomo is his political mentor. Governor Cuomo did a fundraiser for him in New York City, a big high-dollar event fundraiser in New York City. Why didn't Governor Cuomo come to our district like President Trump came to my district to do an event for me?
Right.
Because Governor Cuomo is very unpopular in our district. He lost twice. Why isn't he bringing Nancy Pelosi in? She's spending millions of dollars on his campaign. Millions. And yet he says he's not going to vote for her speaker. I just think that's so dishonest to say to the taxpayers and to the voters, yeah, I'm not going to vote for her for speaker, but I'll continue to take her money. Trust me, Nancy Pelosi would not give him a dime if she thought he wasn't going to vote for him if they take over the majority. So this is all just, politician doublespeak. I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to give him the Golden Flip-Flop Award. He has got a liberal left-wing record. He has aligned himself with either very liberal or very corrupt people. He wants to shoehorn his way into a district that is very Republican, where the president won by large numbers, and he, he's never going to utter a word about the president. His supporters can't stand him, but he can't say that because he simply cannot win NY22 without the support of Trump voters. And I think there's a real dishonesty in that campaign, and he knows it, and that's why they've got to smear me and make me out to be some kind of monster, because that's the only way they're actually going to find it palatable. They've got to find some kind of moral equivalence that I'm somehow as crazy or I'm corrupt or whatever they want. And it's just unfortunate that that's the level of discourse that they're willing to stoop to in smearing my character instead of talking about the issues and our voting record. I am happy to match my voting record, my advocacy against corruption and against this terrible progressivism that has hurt our small business community and our economy every day. And I think we should be talking about that. And I think, that's important. That's really what the issues are.
As far as guns go, many in the media were criticizing the NRA and specifically President Trump for saying that the solution was to have more guns. Now, this school shooter was a legal gun owner as far as I am aware.
On the guns, we tried to put in a bill. It was the so-called Fix NICS bill that would strengthen the background check process so that the reporting would have happened, that we would have known that somebody like this shooter in Parkland would never have been able to obtain a gun. The police went to his door 19 times. There were all kinds of signs on Facebook. He had violent, I'm going to be the next school shooter. He had all kinds of public statements, public things that were occurring that showed that this kid,
correct?
Right, but he never should have had but he was showing, had the school district seen,
that's a very slippery slope that you
right.
go down, where you have people in these rooms making judgment calls about who should get guns and who shouldn't. Shouldn't it be
exactly?
a
But that's not a slippery slope if you think about it this way. So excuse me for 1 second, though. So we have a chief of police in Orlando who knew all these things were happening. 19 times they were called to this kid for violence, for violent acts or acts against families. He should have been referred to somebody, maybe, and before, a background check. The next fix would have required a reporting. If you get called by the police and the police come to your door and, one time, and, obviously you have your due process rights. If you're being brought 19 times, you're threatening to kill people in a school shooting, that's a crime right there.
Right.
You should have been prosecuted for that, and that prosecution should have taken place, and it should have gone through, and it would have background check, and he wouldn't have been able to have the guns.
Right. This
is the kind of lazy police work that led to this kind of irresponsible police work by this particular city. And, that a lot of police feel afraid to do these kind of things. They don't want to, but rights need to be protected, but we also need to make sure that we keep our community safe. And when you're threatening a school shooting, that is something that actually is a crime.
Right. And what I'll say is I agree that we need stronger background checks and better mental health places to provide it to students, whether that's counselors or on staff security guards. There was a security guard at this particular school who...
Right, but the security guard was not on duty when he went into the school. He waited till the security guard left the threshold before he went in, from what they say that the video reveals. I mean, I guess I get to the point where certain people, I agree, should not be possessing guns.
Right.
But I think that you also have to remember that just because there are a couple of plastic parts on an AR-15 that make it look dangerous or more difficult, that doesn't mean that it's more lethal. Shotguns are very lethal. If you shoot a shotgun at someone, and Joe Biden famously said to women, get a 12 gauge and get up on the porch and shoot it off and scare the guy away, or whoever your intruder would be.
But the argument here is that AR-15s are designed for killing more people than just a one person, whereas a shotgun is a lot.
That's your assertion, but that's not the case.
Okay.
They are designed. I mean, they have various uses, and from what I know, based on what the statistics show, it is one of the most commonly used hunting rifles. Okay. Not necessarily made for use it in the military. And military rifles are very different than what the AR-15 is. It's similar. It's not exactly the same.
One last thing here before you go. What do you want to leave our viewers, our listeners here, and keep in their mind as the election comes drawing near?
I think that our listeners need to understand that there is one person in this race who's independent. There's one person, and truly independent, not one that just claims to be. That we should be matching our records of who we stand for and what we stand for to get and see where we are. I'm a small business owner. As I said before, I care about small business. It's the most important thing. I work every day. I keep hearing these phony arguments about how I don't do town halls. I've done 27 or 28 open forums where people could come in. I don't call them town halls anymore because my opponent has totally bastardized the concept of a town hall that was brought on by the Tea Party, where you could actually go and have a conversation with your representative in a forum. When I go to a town hall, I have teams of paid protesters, some of them aren't. Just like they protested President Trump, they bust them in from all over to protest. They weren't from our area. Right. And they just scream at me all day, no matter what I stand for, they're against. They don't want to debate. They don't want to listen. They don't want to hear any viewpoint other than the terrible things they say about me, the lies they spread about me, and they're not interested in the conversation. And quite honestly, the death threats and the nastiness and the vulgarity that comes out is very offensive to our community. We have a lot of people who have worked very hard. Many of them are from immigrant families. Many of them are seniors. They're veterans. They're people who need to want to have an open forum and to be able to talk with their representative without being shouted down. So what I've been doing is now meeting with a veterans group, meeting with people who care about the opioid situation, meeting with the community action groups, which I have brought back historic amount of money to, meeting with different groups and try to really solve the problem, not stand there, grandstanding in a Democratic-sponsored event by Anthony Brindisi's campaign in an echo chamber full of all his friends who ask him the softball question, and he does the same talking points time after time. All this terrible stuff. Claudia Tenney's an embarrassment, and she says all these things, perpetuating the false smearing narrative that they've created. I mean, let's be honest and have a real debate where we're actually talking about what you stand for. And the difference between me and Anthony is he has supported the tax and spend, socialist, corrupt agenda. He has aligned himself with the most corrupt people in our state government, our local government, Ray Halberter, Governor Cuomo, Sheldon Silver, you name it. Those are all the people that are behind him, Nancy Pelosi, and not one of them will he bring to our community to stand up and support him, because our community's catching on, and they know it. I brought the President of the United States in because I've developed a good relationship with him. I have the same feelings sometimes you do about him. I do. He does make me cringe sometimes. He is what he is, but he gets the job done, and we're getting historic amounts of things done. It's unprecedented. And they're going to try to tell you that these things aren't getting done, but it is absolutely amazing how much is getting done right now in Washington. And people should understand something else. I took a commitment to civility. I've been bullied for 8 or 9 years in my short term in politics, bullied by people like Anthony Brindisi and a number of our politicians in our region for just standing up for the people that need to be defended. And, for all this nonsense they talk about, I'm willing to stand up to Governor Cuomo, to Sheldon Silver, to Ray Halberter, people who are robbing our communities. And people should know that. So I took a commitment to civility. And I said that I would not put out any bills in the House of Representatives without a Democratic co-sponsor, that I would use and talk to my Democratic colleagues in advocating with the president or doing resolutions and other things. And I've lived up to that. And I have very good friends on both sides of the aisle, Democrats that are working with us. It takes a little longer. My staff gets a little frustrated sometimes because they want to get a bill out, and I'm like, it's not going out until we have a Democratic co-sponsor. And I've been doing that in a bipartisan way, and I don't have to, by the way. I don't have to use a Democrat because we're in the majority. Anthony Brindisi doesn't need to work with Republicans in the Assembly, and they rarely do. They throw him on there for political effect. That's all. He has to work with the Senate. He has to work with them because they're in the majority, the Republicans. I do it because I want to make sure we're bipartisan. He does it because he's making a political statement, and I think there's a big difference between the two of us when it comes to that. If he really believed in bipartisanship, then he would stand up and vote for reform in the state assembly, which does not allow Republicans to put a bill on the floor for the vote. And let me tell you something. The House of Representatives is not perfect, but Democrats get their bills voted on every single day we're in session. They get a vote. Republicans do not get a vote on the floor of the state assembly, and he has had many opportunities to change that, and he sides with Sheldon Silver and the corrupt majority every time, and not with the people. And I think that tells you the whole story about what he's willing to stand up for. So I got to run, but I love talking to you, Luke. You're a tremendous
Thanks for coming on.
prodigy. Talk to you soon.
Much. Thanks for listening to the Elected News podcast here during the Fan Appreciation Week here at Elected News. I hope you were able to watch our video yesterday of when President Trump came to Utica. It was fantastic. We waited really long to put it out, but I hope everybody enjoyed it. Tomorrow we have a very, very special video behind the United Nations, a special behind-the-scenes look at the United Nations. So that should be really exciting. On Thursday, we're going to be doing a set tour of our Elected News set. And then Friday, we have a very special surprise video that we are going to unveil on Thursday. So be sure to tune in on Thursday to our set tour to find out what that surprise video is going to be. Thanks for listening, and as always, be sure to email us your questions at watchelected@gmail.com. And as always, subscribe, like, comment, and share. And be sure to tune in 10 days for Elected News podcast episode 5, where we're going to have another really, really awesome guest on the show. We've been able to get so many amazing guests on the show, and we're going to keep them coming. So thanks again for listening, and have a great day.